Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Amir. I'm here with another entry in the Goon Profile series, and today I am talking with Ty, aka Diabetes Leg. How are you, Ty?
I am doing excellent. Thank you for having me. And George, you are a fat piece of shit.
Yes, just so we're all on the same page. So you're
Just wanted to get that out so we're all on the same wavelength, um, which I know everyone can agree on. So just want to get that out in the open.
your handle is hilarious, Diabetes Leg. Uh, I'm not sure how long ago you created that, but it's become more and more relevant in this saga.
Yeah, this was a month or two ago. I think I got the name, and I I have been following Gigi's Lulz for a couple years now since the Danknet video came out, and I just started coming in the Discord more and more often, and you know, trolling Gigi more and more often. And then I don't even know how the name came about exactly. I think I asked for it after seeing those disgusting legs and those just unkept, sweaty socks, and it just seemed like the fitting handle.
Yeah, they are hard to look at. S-
Oh, painful.
So you mentioned you got involved in the GG saga from Net's video,
Correct.
and eventually you started actually contributing to the community. Do you remember when and why you kind of made that move from a lurker to a goon?
Yeah, it was started with emails. Um, I remember the first email I sent was just me just letting him know, hey, I'm in your real world now. It was after I found out about Jamie, if I'm not mistaken. And coming from the background I come from, you just don't do that. You don't treat women like that. You don't talk to women like that. Um, and it's very hard to stomach. I mean, look, we can all joke about George, and it's fun to just call him out for being, just a complete lol cow. But under the surface, there is a lot of like evil and like fucked up stuff there. And that's kind of like what started to get me involved in it was the Jamie thing. And I remember I I had an email and I signed. I think I wrote it like I was in third person, and I was like Gigi talking to himself, like just letting him know, like reminding himself all the things that he already knows about himself, what a horrible person he is. And so I signed it George Yared, and I think he said something like "using my father's surname, you piece of shit," or something like that, something like that.
I love that concept. I mean, it almost sounds like you were trying to talk to George as is conscious
Yes,
that he
exactly.
should
And
have.
it's the voice that I already know that he talks to himself as. It's just the voice he doesn't want us to know he talks to himself as. I mean, why else would you like put out a persona that is so completely over the top? Like not even good like Ric Flair over the top, just bad, cringeworthy, nauseating. I mean, there's a whole list of words you could use to describe that. Only somebody who would carry themselves such as that, really thinks of themselves as that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. George, he's so in love with this gorgeous George persona, but taking it at face value, the gorgeous George persona is a bad person objectively.
Yes.
So yeah, it's weird that he admires that persona so much.
Well, it's so bad. Like I said, it's not good. Like a Ric Flair or something like that, like that's cool. Like that's like, that's a guy who believes the hype. You know what I'm saying? Like he knows that about himself and he'll walk the walk and talk the talk, type deal or talk talk, walk the walk. And Gigi is a guy living in a van and, each video that comes out, he's more and more disheveled, more and more unkept, yellower teeth, yellower fingernails, just gross. And it's just like, you can't honestly think of yourself as this like killer ladies man, ball. You can't. It's just not possible.
He does seem to be very removed from reality.
Oh, very much so. Like, and that's, and I don't know what kind of like mental condition that is, but it seems like the worse things are getting, the farther out of touch he becomes.
Yeah, mostly narcissism, I think.
Yeah.
It's just the rejection of criticism. has so removed him from reality that
Yeah, and yeah, that's another thing. Like, I don't think I've ever seen somebody so unable to like laugh at themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, I use self-deprecating humor all the time. Like, it's just I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or whatever it may be, but you know, for me, I don't see the issue with being able to laugh at yourself. Like, if you take life too serious, man, that's how you end up. Like George, you got to be able to laugh at yourself because nobody's perfect.
yeah,
We all have skeletons in our closet.
that's a really great point. I mean, self-deprecation in moderation is extremely healthy. It keeps you humble and tethered to reality for sure.
Yeah, and like, look, like when I say we all have skeletons, like I mean like we've all done things that we're not proud of. George's skeletons is like a fucking Indian graveyard, like the things he's done, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah. So George has, criticized the community regarding psychologically profiling him. I
Correct.
get the feeling he has a mentality that we think, like you said, we don't think we have our own skeletons. I'd love to talk about your personal mental health journey.
Yeah.
Is there anything you've gone through that is similar to George or parallels George, but you've handled
S-
in a different way?
So like I have, and I know, I've discussed with you in private, the when I had the brain spec scans done, I think it was in 2018. And a brain spec scan is what they do is they basically, and maybe you could explain further the ins and outs of how it technically works, but what I know is that you go in and they give you an IV, and it's this like special dye that settles in your brain. And the first day you go in, they put you in front of a computer, and whenever a letter pops up, if it's the letter X, you hit the space bar, and if it's any other letter, you don't. What they're trying to do is get your brain in an active state. Then you go in kind of like what's like an MRI machine, and they take images of your brains for like another 20 minutes. Then you go in the next day, give you an IV, the dye goes in, and then you just sit in a quiet, all blacked out room for 20 minutes. And that's to get your brain in a rested state. And actually, here, while I'm talking to you, I'm going to pull up the diagnosis real quick to read that off to you. So, anyways, they do that. And I remember, I had an idea of like what the diagnosis may be. Um, but when it came back, I remember I was floored because uh, you just like, here, hold on one sec. Give me 2 seconds. Uh, uh, where is it? There we oh, dang it, where'd that go? There it is. Okay, so this is as follows. Um, okay, psychiatric and neurological diagnoses are as follows: major depression, recurrent severe without psychosis, frontal lobe disorder slash dysfunction, polysubstance dependence, post concussional syndrome, and post traumatic stress disorder. And um, the post concussion or the post traumatic stress disorder um, comes from my childhood abuse that I went through. But I remember I was really angry at first because you're looking at these images of your brain and you realize that because of what some fucked up people did to you, it had an actual physical change in your brain's chemistry. Like your brain is permanently altered because of what somebody did to you. And you just feel cheated and robbed, um, angry. And man, I remember I broke down. And it's like one of the only few times I've like really gotten sad about, like, what I went through. Um, and I remember I was like, I can't have post traumatic stress disorder. I'm like, I didn't go to war, because so often it's tied in, with war and soldiers and stuff.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and so he put, obviously the guy's name was blacked out and everything, but like he put a guy who did 3 tours in Iraq, Afghanistan type deal next to mine, and the results are almost exactly the same. And he said, trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter what caused it. Your brain's going to react to it the same. And especially during the years of age that I was when it happened, I was 7. Um, and it taught me from a young age how to project an image to the world. Um, a lot like Gigi in the sense of projecting an image, but only my thing was I just projected an image that I was very happy. and just a happy-go-lucky kid, and that I wasn't inside like deeply suffering.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Ty, to hear all about that. I It is completely unfair how other people can so affect the chemistry of your brain and the makeup of your emotions. And that's why from the start gave George the benefit of the doubt, because who knows from his relationship with his father how much his brain chemistry could have been influenced. But I mean, I'm sure, uh, like you said, the initial shock of finding this all out, I imagine, was devastating. But uh, have you found any comfort in knowing the diagnosis now, or have you been able to use that to grow or
Yeah,
learn more about yourself?
yeah, I think after the initial shock, there was like kind of like a wave of comfort in the sense of like, okay, at least now I know. Because like I was, I had abused drugs and alcohol for a number of years leading up to that. Um, Especially narcotic pain medicine was like my big thing. And opiates in general calmed the chaos that was going on between my ears. Um, they they just gave, it was like this relief of like this blanket of relief that like wrapped me up and like just made me feel content. Which until I had found those, I didn't even realize it was something I was searching for until I did. Like because I remember I had had a surgery because because of the sport I competed in, my body was really banged up. And according to George, that's black belt underground ultimate fighting. According to George, even though when I and you know this, Fatty, when we had a conversation the other day, I specifically said to you, George, I never said I was a black belt. When did I say that? And he goes, well, you were insinuating. I'm like, what? Because I said I used to be a mixed martial arts fighter. That automatically means I was a black belt. Yeah, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But anyways, um, so yeah, leading up to that, that was kind of like there was this relief, and then though comes the reality of this is a daily battle, right? Like this is something that like I have to like be aware of and be conscious of every day, and especially like now that like I found out, like I was telling you privately the other day, I found out my father has terminal cancer, and my dad and I are extremely close, very close, and uh, there's a part of you as a recovering addict and alcoholic, like whenever things get bad, I don't care how long you have sober, like when things get bad, there's that voice in the back of your head that's like, hey, it'll make this pain go away. It'll make this, not, like, and of course it gets easier with time, but like it's always there. And but the reality is like this isn't about me, right? This is about him. And I get the opportunity to show up for him and help him walk through this and be of service to him. So that way, when it's all said and done, like I know I did the right thing and I know that like anything that needs to be said between him and I can be said. And and that's just how it's gonna be. Like we were just talking, I'm not special. My parents don't get to live to be like 115 because I want it to be that way. Like this is just life. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just grateful that my father was not a butthole touching janitor. So
Yeah, we all are. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, that shows a lot of power and strength. You know, anyone can understand how addiction is so powerful itself, but being able to prioritize the feelings of others over that is certainly really helpful. And I'm really glad to hear that you're on a really good recovery journey. It sounds like. Do you have any advice for people dealing with addiction?
it's one of those things that like I could sit here and like I've told my story and the 12-step program that I go to 1,000 times, and I've tried to help people who at different points of their journey were in different stages. And the one thing I've learned is like anything I say or do, none of it's going to mean anything until they're ready to be done. Like it's just you got to get to the point where it's like you've had enough, and that's different for everybody. Like for me, my last day of using was like not at all close to the worst it's ever been. I don't know why it was that day. And, God willing, and I hope it stays that way. But I think it was an accumulation of, you know, fucked up stuff and crazy situations, and just having to rely on something else and having to have it around you at all times, because if you don't have it you get dope sick. Like, you're living life as a slave, right? Like, you're very limited to what you can do with your life because you have to have it with you at all times. And
Yeah,
then there's the mind, you have to worry about running out, and it's just a shitty way of living life. um so, like, my only advice would be, like, try to understand that, like, it's not going to get better, it's only going to get worse. It's a progressive illness, and it never gets better. In all my time doing this, I've never seen it get better for anybody.
it's been proposed that Jamie went back to using drugs because of stressors in her life, the main one being
Yes.
George. In your recovery journey, did you have any external stressors that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, like life is a stressor, right? Like, like what I'm going through right now, that's a stressor. Like, it's there's always going to be stressors, but like when you have something like that, like, I can only imagine being a woman and being vulnerable in the sense that, like, you have this big oaf following you around, fucking up your life, calling people that are closely related to you or friends of yours and following you around, stalking you. Like, I couldn't imagine if I'm just trying to get, like, those first 30 days of sobriety are extremely fucking difficult, even under the best of circumstances. Like, even if you're in an isolated treatment center with no outside influence, no outside stressors, it's still hard. And to be in that situation, I don't know how she could have done it. Honestly, it's just too much.
Yeah, it certainly seemed overwhelming just reading the text. Uh, I
Oh
would
yeah,
I would like to talk about segue into George and his relationship with women. Being a man and having a hard time reading women or having a hard time navigating a relationship is a
correct,
pretty common problem. I myself have certainly had my moments where I did not correctly understand a woman who I was interested in.
correct.
Um, but George, his response to it is so
Oh, dude,
unhealthy, um,
yeah.
borderline violent. Do you have an opinion on where that comes from and what exactly he's doing wrong there that we
Oh
all
well, yeah. I mean, I think you agree with me. It ties back to his mother leaving him at birth, or close to birth, right? I
yeah.
mean, how could it not? Like, I know that, like, part of my issues with women, and, like, for me, going out, and look, I'm not trying to say I'm fucking Brad Pitt, but I'm not a bad looking guy. Like, one of my strong suits is I'm very personable. I don't need to, I'm confident in approaching women. I have, good sense of humor. Like, those are all things I have going in my favor. So for me though, there was a period of time where, when I was young, my mom left for a while. Long story short, because of my dad's drinking. Now, my dad's been sober for 15 years, but back then he was, building his business up and taking customers out every night. So he was gone a lot. And my dad, doing the best he knew how to do at the time, left me with this couple that was, like, supposed to be a babysitting thing. And it was, like, very violent physical, mental, sexual abuse, like, across the board, extremely bad. Like, everything of my innocence was robbed at age 7, all of it. Uh, my childhood ended right then and there. But because of that, like, I became, like, sexually active very young, like, very young. Um, my understanding of, like, women and, like, what is a healthy relationship, and sex in general was totally fucked up because of, what I went through. And it took a lot of years of, like, therapy and help and asking for help and being vulnerable. Like, even now, like, how many fucking people are gonna hear this, you know, on YouTube, and, like, and they don't even know me, and I'm putting this out there. Like, that takes time to get to that point, right? To be confident in the sense that, like I said, we all have shit in our path. Like, but I'm okay with my stuff, right? There's nothing that anybody could say to me that's going to make me feel bad about like my shit, what I've been through, because I've already worked through that. But that takes time. You got to ask for help. If you rely on your own self, if you rely on self without any, professional help when you've been through stuff like that, or, George situation, like I'm assuming majority of the time you're not going to behave properly. You're not going to react properly. But I think George has an extreme hatred for women. I think he looks at them as objects, not as people. Um, I think that he is. I think that George, and this is just from a distance, like I think that when George meets somebody, a girl that he likes, like he latches on because he has abandonment issues, which I can relate to. There's I don't think I think that's people. I think that if like George was to get real and be vulnerable, like actually put out that like like hey yeah it is something that bothers me, it is something that I think he would get a lot more sympathy from people. Um, but to act like you're this alpha male, blah blah. It's just it's so transparently fake.
Yeah, if George was honest publicly about his faults and his fears, I don't know if he would be trolled at all.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Ty, hearing about your story, your experience with those babysitters is devastating. That kind of stuff is always hard to hear that it happens in the world, but I'm so glad that you can be honest about it, and it sounds like you've put a lot of work into mentally repairing the severe damage that comes from that. I want to pick out, you mentioned that you talked to people, you asked for help. I think that's the key, and probably, I mean, likely something George has never done, which is why he's in the position he's in.
Yeah, and like another one, for me that I got so much out of, and it's going to sound counterintuitive when you first hear this, but in a therapeutic setting, I did did um, oh god, not ayahuasca, but what's the DMT, and what I was able to get out of that was profound. Um, I had this experience, and anyone who's tried DMT will tell you that you get something out of it, and it's different every time. From my understanding, I've only did it this one time, but I had this huge, profound experience. I don't know what DMT is, or like, DMT is our body produces it, and it's I don't know how to it's different. So, like I've tried a bunch of hallucinogenics, right? Mushrooms, acid, all that stuff. But when you're doing those things, you're tripping, but you're aware that you are tripping. When you do DMT, it's like your soul shoots into a different atmosphere, and you're just this beam of energy. And I was able to get. It's a whole, it's a long story, but why I got out of it, what I did, but what I was able to get out of it was that I don't need to be rescued. Like I am capable, fully capable of asking for help and being able to do this on my own in the sense of like getting better. Um, but doing it on my own also means that I got to ask for help. If that sounds kind of weird. Um, so I know that a lot of people are trying ketamine for post traumatic stress disorder in therapeutic settings, and that's been very helpful. I was thinking about trying that. So there's like a bunch of different ways to like go about it, but I think there's no one right way. I think you just got to try things and see what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. For my position, I certainly have never, pushed psychedelics, but I
Yeah.
really have heard a lot of people have positive experiences with mushrooms, LSD, things like that, where they just do it once and have a very introspective experience and kind of learn more big picture things about themselves. And I mean, I in general am never gonna
Yeah, I
recommend.
think it depends on it's the environment and the reason for doing it, right? Like for instance, when I did mushrooms and acid, like I was in like party atmospheres. I was much younger, and so I wasn't looking to get anything like therapeutic out of it. I just want to have a good time. Whereas in a therapeutic setting, under monitored by somebody, it's a much different experience. And it's not like I'm taking a massive amounts. It's very small amounts. Um,
Right. It's a controlled situation, and that's a
yeah,
really
correct.
good point.
Yeah. And so that's why you're able to, or at least I was able to get out of it what I did. I don't go recommend going to your local drug dealer and buying DMT and going and just, smoking that by yourself or like with a bunch of buddies. That's not what I'm trying to promote. Uh, but yeah, like for instance, the place I went to was down in Mexico, like, cause you can't do that here in the States really, that I'm aware of. And that was why I was able to, do that. So.
So it has also been kind of the gauntlet has been thrown down on the Goon community as to why George is trolled. So, from a psychological standpoint, and you've given some reasons already, but if you could summarize it, psychologically, why do you troll George?
You know, I think for me, like I said, I see what he did to Jamie, and that's abuse. So, as a man, we're wired to be protectors, right? And even though I don't know Jamie, like I felt this like internal need to like stand up for her because when I read those texts, the first ones that came out, dude, I'll tell you, I got really angry. Like it's just so fucked up, right? Like here's this woman who obviously has issues, has addiction issues, which I can relate to, has her own issues that I'm sure that even though it may be different, is the same in a lot of ways. Um, and then you have this oaf, just making it 50 times worse from her, from what we all know. And so I think, wired as a man to, be raised the way I was by two great parents that, you treat women with respect. You don't, you know, you don't, verbally abuse them. You don't physically abuse them, And so I think initially that's what it is. But, there are a lot of, but also part of it is having fun with it too. Like it's just, because of his reactions. I mean, how could you not? But underneath the surface, I think that for me, that's why. Um, I see that, and then when the second round came out, I was just like, dude, like somebody's got to do something because this is fucked up.
Yeah, the part of it that's funny seeing George rage, like psychologically, that's so hard to intelligently explain. Sometimes it's
Yeah,
just funny to see a fat guy get mad and yell
exactly.
incoherent insults. But yeah, to your other point,
And might I add, a lot of the insults that throws out there are things that I know that he feels about himself. And so I think there's a lot of like self hatred with Gigi that he projects out to the world to get it out because I think he doesn't know how to handle it.
oh yeah, 100%. A person with the time could make a pretty long compilation of
Yeah,
examples of projection over the years from George. And yeah, I think it's totally just him being really self-conscious about failings about himself and accusing other people of it before they can accuse him of it.
100%.
And to your point of trolling George just because of the pain he's caused people like Jamie. Yeah, I mean I think anybody with a pretty good moral compass would be in that same boat. I know I am too. I do also feel just like a general personal responsibility to stick up for innocent people against people like George who are abusing an innocent person's existence. I
Yeah,
I know me myself, I'm not physically intimidating like someone like you is, but even so, when George threatens Angela, who is a very sweet lady and just trying to tell her
I
story
know.
and her deceased friend's story, when George threatens her, that definitely gets me ruffled up and ready to go to
Well,
war because it's just not the kind
yeah.
of world you want to live in where
Well, think about this. If everything that George is saying is true, let's say that everything that Angela says is nonsense, is bullshit, it's not true. Why would you get so angry, George? If you know it's not true, why can't I mean like what's the issue here? We all know because it is true. That's why he gets so mad. He doesn't want people to know what he's really like.
absolutely 100%. I mean, in every argument George has gotten involved with the goons over the years, he runs away from the argument. You know, the goons come to
Oh,
it with evidence,
yeah.
George comes to it with bullshit, and then he runs away. And I mean, it's obvious that he knows that we're right. He runs
Well, by
away
the way,
because
but
he,
might I add, one of my most recent personal favorites is when you said to him, "You know, George, because the conversation that we recorded, you didn't know it was being recorded. It was a private conversation. That's even more evidence that that's really what you're like." He said, "Well, no, and he'll say the same thing again, not understanding that like you're giving even more credence to what you were saying. Like because it was a private conversation that is very much that's even more proof that's what you're really like. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, George trying to write off those Saunders calls just because Saunders
Oh
was
yeah,
secretly
it's
recording them,
ridiculous.
like that somehow cancels out George's, you
Yeah,
know,
no, that's even more
intentions.
proof.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and at the end of the day, this is all evidence-based discussion. I I find it silly when I mean, a person like Roger, who I've been on record, I like Roger. He's sticking up for his friend George, and I respect that on the surface, though
Yeah,
I hope it's something he continues
as
to think about.
as confused as it may be and how incorrect it may be. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but Roger, he questions the validity of those text messages
Oh,
that we recently reviewed. But, take a look at the evidence. Everything that George says about Jamie and Angela in those texts is consistent with how he talks about them now. Everything that
yeah.
Jamie says to Angela about George is consistent to things George has admitted doing.
Well, look at the
Everything.
voicemails compared to the text messages. Can you not see those text messages being said out loud by George?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Like all of the language and all of the tone from everybody in those text messages completely matches
it's
what
identical.
we've heard. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's the evidence. It's hard to argue their legitimacy when
Like
they
even the
match
best,
everything that we already know and have seen and have heard.
yeah, even the best GG troller and with the most GG knowledge cannot verbatim sound as much like George as those texts do.
Yeah, yeah, right. And it's just so on brand for everybody. Like, can you imagine of hearing a voicemail where Angela is raging and telling people to, rub their vaginas together, and
Oh, I
George,
know
a
it's
voicemail
ridiculous.
where George is like, "Hey, thank you for calling. I appreciate you taking the time."
One golden rubber, but I don't use them. Oh God, so fucking bad. Oh,
So,
I get sick to my stomach when I think about it. It's just so bad.
yeah, from
Ugh,
a psychological standpoint, what do you think George can do to improve his mental health or his life
dude,
at all at this
I
point?
think he's so far past like I just think he's incapable of asking for help and incapable of being able to laugh at self, being able to not take self so seriously. Like I get some of the trolling can be, pretty heavy, but it's like it's gotten that way because of your behavior. Like like it didn't just come this way overnight. Like, you have a part in this. And like that's the other thing. And like for me, like I when I get in situations like I always have to look at my part in things. Like, you know, like for instance, like my most recent breakup with my girlfriend. Like I could sit here and point fingers and tell you all the horrible things that she did, in my opinion, blah 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 blah. But I have to take a step back and be like, okay, well, what was my part in this, right? And a lot of the times, as much as I don't like to admit it, I had a part in things. And that also, for me, like makes life a lot easier. Is like when I'm able to admit fault, that other person I've found a lot of time is also then capable of admitting fault. And then we're able to come to a resolution a lot faster. Whereas if I just scream and yell and point fingers, nothing gets accomplished.
Yeah, you're 100% on it. That introspection of yourself, it can be hard, but it's just so important for growth and improving your character. And, people where, someone you might have had a failed relationship before, if you learn a lesson from that and grow, you may actually, reconnect with that person because, the faults
Yeah.
you may have had that caused the relationship to break, maybe you took that lesson and learned from it and no longer have that fault, so that
Yeah, like
relationship has, reason to be healthy.
exactly. Like me and her will never be together again just because like I she she's a lot like Georgia in the sense that like I don't think she's capable of reaching out and asking for help. Like she has her own childhood shit that's very heavy. And she was raised by her father and so I think that she looks at asking for help, therapy, as kind of like being weak minded. Like a lot of, like old fashioned way of thinking, about
Yeah.
asking for help and therapy, the way we are wired and raised, like, that's just what we're taught, right? Growing up. And so she has a lot of that. And so until she's able to drop that, I don't, it just wouldn't work. But at least I'm able to have, peace with knowing that because I'm able to like look at things, the way I look at things now. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. George has certainly shown a lack of being able to admit to his faults over the years, so it's no surprise that he doesn't grow his mental health and
No.
continues to make the same mistake over and over.
Yep. Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Write that down, George.
What I only um, have a few more questions left.
Yeah, yeah.
This may be my last one, but after that, if there's anything specific you want to talk about, please do. But I'm curious to get your opinion on this. So we've talked a lot about George and his mental health problems. Do you see the people who are still around him, like Roger Watt, people like that consider him a friend? Are they in danger in any way of continuing a friendship with George or any future relationships? Is there anything any future woman should be worried about with George?
Oh god. Run. Um, yeah, I mean like the evidence speaks for itself, right? Like for instance, what happened that one time when Roger was on the phone with everybody in the Discord? I think it was the Discord chat. And how many times did Gigi call him? What was
Y-
it, like 118 or something
Yeah,
ridiculous?
that was on a Fieldins podcast, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
George went
look at
crazy
that.
ex girlfriend on them.
Yeah, like look at that behavior. Like, I mean, how many days do you think that Jamie had where George called her like 50, 60, 70 times, sent like 50, 60, 70 text messages of just like pure rage and hate, right? Like, that must have been a consistent theme in her life, just out of the fear that you hear when reading her text messages with Angela.
Yeah.
Like, that's not healthy. Nothing about that's healthy. So when George says, "Oh, we fought like cats and dogs, but that's our business," no, George, that's fucking emotional abuse. That's not fighting like cats and dogs. That's not even close to the same thing.
Yeah, do you think that he's just denying their relationship, or do you think
There
he
wasn't a relationship. They never had a relationship. Like it was him stalking her. Let's be real. Like that's what it sounds like, right? Like she was never in an emotional or committed, relationship with him ever. So when he talks the way he does, it's delusional. It's not based in reality. So the fact that he's able to like be so detached from what reality is, that's another scare.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of his most prevalent symptoms to who he is as a person is his
Yeah, he's
detachment from
totally
reality.
detached. No, totally detached. I mean, anybody could sit here and look at it from the outside looking in. And look, once again, like I've been guilty of like the way that I think something is with like the relationship with my girlfriend or loved one or whatever. Like somebody, that's why we ask for help because somebody can look at it from an outside point of view and be like, "Hey, look, I think you're doing this, this, and this wrong." If you have a good friend, they're going to be real with you, right? Um, so look, we all have these faults, right? It's just George has extreme versions of it and isn't capable of asking for help. It looks like, and so, um, like on a real talk, like if there's anything that like George was able to get out of maybe because I know he's going to hear this, like maybe he can hear this and like think to himself, okay, maybe I should start asking for help. Maybe I should not take myself so serious. Like maybe he'll get something out of this. I don't know, but and these are just outside, from the evidence that we have, this is just my opinions. Um, this is just what I see. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I first got involved in this, I was rooting for George to improve his mental health. You know, I had the thought it'd be sad to lose a pretty classic lolcow, but it would be
yeah,
better for the world to gain another decent human being, which can sometimes seem like there's a short supply of them. But George seems very unwilling to work on his mental health,
yeah, and
unfortunately.
like I don't know. I don't see it improving. Honestly, I just he's so dug in to the way he is that I can only see it getting worse. I mean, if I'm being real.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he would need to be in counseling for the remainder of his life to
Yeah,
really make
which I'm
significant
probably going to be
improvement.
myself. So there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there really isn't. I'm in counseling too. I get a
Yeah,
lot out of it, and I
yeah.
generally recommend it for anyone. It's not like you
No,
need to have
yeah.
some official mental health diagnosis to see a counselor.
No, like the guy that I see, like I, I don't even know if if I'm really thinking about it, I don't even know if he's officially licensed per se. Like it's just that I know the man he is, I know the character he has, and I get so much good advice from him that that's all I care about. Like is like what's the pudding, the proof in the pudding? Like what is the substance of it? And I get a lot out of it with him, and that's all I'm looking to get. Right? It doesn't matter if the person has a PhD from Harvard. If you're not getting anything out of it, then why? What's it matter?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really happy to hear you have that. As at the end of the day, as long as you have someone in your life that you can trust and doesn't enable bad habits or bad behavior, that's a really good thing for your mental health.
Yeah, and so, surrounding yourself with good people is a huge thing. Like if you look at that trio of locales, like that doesn't seem like a very healthy thing,
Right, yeah,
right?
no, that does not breed positive mental health
No,
development. The three of
that
them
breeds
together.
conspiracy theories and alcoholism is what that breeds. Like I'm very fortunate that I have a good support group around me, especially like I said, with what I got going on with my dad. That I can call when I'm at my place, like when I'm having a hard time, because I know there's going to be days ahead that I'm going to break down, right? Like as things get worse, like we all know what cancer does. It's horrible. And when you love somebody, you don't want to see them in pain, right? So I know there's some heavy days ahead, but I know I can get through it too because of the support group I have.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to hear you have those resources. Well,
Yeah, man, I'm very fortunate.
Ty, that ends my list of topics to talk about. Before we close up, is there anything you personally would like to say about your journey or George or anything in general?
You know what? I got to thank pretty much all of the other fellow trolls because, I'll be honest, especially with once again what I got going on with my dad, it's nice being able to just join the Discord and be able to laugh. Because life can get fucking heavy and life cannot be fair, and it's good to be able to laugh, and it's good to be able to make each other laugh and be able to laugh at yourself, right? Um, so I got to thank all the fellow trolls because it's made my life lately a lot easier. And yeah, George, thank you for being the locale that you are. Because you too give me something to laugh about. So that's all.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Ty, for taking the time today, and thank you seriously for your brave and blunt honesty in this. I hope it is, like you said, really helpful for people to hear, and I love hearing your opinions on George and his psychological state.
I'm glad to be on, man. I'm glad I could share and hope somebody out of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ty. I appreciate it. Well, that is
Awesome, brother.
that is our Goon profile with Ty, aka Diabetes Leg. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments of this video and have a great day.